Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. Michaela Canterbury is used to challenges. She's a successful personal injury attorney in Alaska, but her biggest challenge wasn't in the courtroom. It was facing her beloved sister's drug addiction. In her book, Sister Siren, she details her sister's story. It's a story of family, heartbreak, and ultimately a story of love. Please welcome Michaela to Bump in the Road. Michaela, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Thank you so much for having me. My story is, I come from a family of high-functioning professionals. I'm a trial lawyer. That's my day job. My dad's a trial lawyer. I'm married to a trial lawyer. We're in business together. My mother's a PhD. My sister has a master's in counseling. And so I come from a family of high-functioning professionals. And out of the blue, addiction came into our lives. And it was brewing under our noses, and we didn't even know it. So my sister was an elite athlete, as are my children. And she was performing very well in all things that she touched, or all things that she did. And so she was addicted. She got addicted started out with pain medication, pain pills, when she broke her ankle in a speed skating event in Canada. She was in the Arctic Winter Games as a speed skater, and she was about preteenish that time frame. And a little background is my sister and I are 13 years difference in age. So I was like a built-in babysitter for my parents, a really cool sub-parent for my sister. So we have a unique sibling relationship where it's somewhat maternal on my end. In fact, people would say, when we were, older, if I was her mom. Anywho, so my story, there's an element of my story that is about walking through active addiction with my sister and how our family responded. And it has opened up into how loving people in difficult situations, that's having a template for that. For me, that's what I needed, as I needed a template. And so then I wrote a book about how we stepped into that. And it has a happy ending. My sister will be celebrating, we will all be honoring 4 years that she has been in recovery this March. So it has a happy ending. I wrote a book on this element of my story because I'm still living. And so has a happy ending. And so that's my story in a nutshell. I'm sure we'll get into some of the details of that further as we go along.
It's interesting you say this is a template. Life does not, we don't have templates for these things that we hit in life. We really don't. In addiction, your story really moved me in that it's astonishing the depths to which people fall in addiction, and they don't want to give it up. And there's nothing you can do until they're willing to make a change. I've been through this with a business partner. It's just a terrible set of circumstances, and it's way beyond your control.
Yes, my heart is like, I don't know. It's going in and out with when you say that, because it's so very true and it resonates so greatly. I wanted my sister's recovery more than she did. And there were there were times, and I was really trying to tell her, this is the way we do it. I mean, like the first time I was showing up, I'm like, okay, chip, chop, chip. This is what we're going to do. I'm the overgiver in the family. I'm the fixer. I'm that one. So, I went out and I was trying to research how we do this. I wanted to rubric this. Okay, what is the template for this? And I'm just going to, check off the boxes and this is what we're going to do. But this addiction thing is a slippery little eel, and it flips and flops, and and then that's what my presence ended up being is oh, my dogs are up. My dogs just got up. I'm sorry about that. But that was my presence of, stepping into this and then realizing I want this more than her, stepping back. How can I show up in this relationship? That's really different right now. It's really hard right now. And I want things for her, and she's not there yet.
Now, your sister's path to addiction has a bit of history to it. It didn't happen overnight.
That's true. And like I said, when she broke her ankle at the Arctic Winter Games, she was a preteen, and this was in Canada. So from Alaska, it's still a foreign country, right? So they're treating it with oxycodone and hydrocodone and morphine drip when she's not fully developed physically, mentally, and certainly not spiritually. And so this is my theory. I'm not a doctor. I just play one on TV. I'm a personal injury lawyer, so I've seen this kind of stuff happen in my practice, but I couldn't see it. Of course, when this happened with my sister, I wasn't a lawyer yet. But then shortly after that event, she was assessed with ADHD. And so then there's another layer of medication. That time, I want to say it was Ritalin, and it's meth light, basically. So that happened at a young age for her. And I'm off in college and doing my thing when this kind of stuff is happening with my family. And my parents were doing what the doctors told them to do. This is how you treat a broken ankle. This is how ADHD is managed with medication. And it was a newer assessment back in the day when this was happening, which is, I want to say the 90s, the early to mid 90s when this was happening. So, and it evolved from there. Her body and her mind and her spirit became dependent upon medication that makes her it started from there, and it grew from there, and it evolved from there. And I mean, there were other injuries along the way in her athletic career. I mean, she recovered from that broken ankle and went on to play college soccer. So she was captain of her soccer team. So she's a college athlete, and doing well in that. I mean, she was even considering trying out for the women's soccer team for Seattle. I think it's called the Sounders or something like that. But she chose the education route and got her master's in counseling. But and it was still happening. I mean, it's like she's getting injuries, and the reassessment, if you will, for ADHD wasn't happening. But along with that, she's doing other drugs. I mean, that was just happening, whether it was pot, cocaine, mushrooms, everything. She was doing it. And we didn't know. And coaches didn't know. And this is at a time where that testing stuff wasn't going on for athletes. So her dependency on substances evolved. We had no clue. She was so high functioning, so doing well. There the signs of, at that time, of isolation or crises happening, because she was performing so well. Yeah.
When did you know?
Well, I can look back and I recognize some what we call red flags, but really it was when her soul sister girlfriends went to my mother and said, they were coming up from, we call you guys the lower 48. So they were coming up from the lower 48 and for the summer and they wanted to see my sister. And my sister didn't show up, or that she eventually did, and it was late, and there were always these excuses. And then finally she showed up at the campfire and they were being girlfriends. And my sister told them that she's doing drugs and her husband gives them to her. And so the girlfriends who love her went right to my mom and deposited this information. And my mother was alone at the time. And in hindsight, looking back, I mean, right now in the present 2022, we know that my mom is in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's. So we know that now. Back in this time period, 2017-ish, we're surmising that my mother was in that was going on, but we didn't know that either because my mom's really smart. So anyway, they deposited this information with my mother, and my mother calls me because my father he's an outdoorsman. He was fishing or hunting or something. And my mom was hysterical and didn't want to believe it. And her initial response was, what do they know? Why would they do this to me? That was really my mom's initial response. And I was thinking at the time, gee, my mom's a smart woman. Mom, we've known these women their whole lives. They've been to our house for prom, we've been to soccer games with them. We've known them. There's no reason. They love her. This is the truth. And so my mother was really afraid to share it with my father, because she was concerned about, well, he's going to blame me for all of this. And I'm like, that was another just kind of query for me. And I look back on this now and can see this as like perhaps a red flag for the Alzheimer's that perhaps was brewing as well. But I'm just like caught in this storm of weirdness, wait, what? My sister does heroin and meth? Wait, what, Mom, you think her lifetime friends are lying to us about this? We are smart people. we need to come together and noodle on this. And so that's how I found out, was from my mom after my soul sisters revealed it to my mother.
It's really interesting. I don't think any of us want to, we all have these constructs of the world that work for us. And as long as they work, we work them. And we don't want to have that destroyed. And that sort of information really shifts your worldview. And I find it really interesting that your mom's response was that to take it personally, that somehow it reflected on her.
Yeah.
Is that common?
Well, I felt that way. So perhaps it is common. But my dad didn't feel that way. My dad's like, well, I know it wasn't my fault. I raised her right, But I had some guilt about how I may have contributed to this. Over the years, there had been car crashes and I always represented her and I got her a lot of money. I was successful in my prosecution of these civil claims. And so I did it too. And I got concerned about my children. Oh my God, are she and her husband, selling drugs to my kids' friends? Does this whole community know? And I don't.
Yeah.
So perhaps it is common. I feel that it is. Your first response is how it affects you. And how did I contribute to this, or or could I have done more? There was that whole guilt friggin' stuff, which is a sloshy marsh to march through, you know, and then going to, having to reveal it to my husband, and then how we're going to step in with our kids. And I think it is, you take it personally. Yeah.
If you could go back, would you change your reactions?
Well, I know more now.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. What's the wisdom to come out of this from your perspective?
The wisdom to come out of this. So much. Always step in with love. Doing the judgy McJudger thing and telling people what to do, whether it's the person who's in addiction or the fan of your loved ones, all the loved ones that are around, telling other people how to step in or what to do. Because that's a no-go, because we're all plotting out our own journey here on the relationship with the person that we love. And so I'm the master and commander of that ship for my relationship with my sister. And my husband's the master and commander of his ship. And so I don't even want to use the word allowing, but stepping back to let others step in, how they're going to step in is a beautiful thing. And my wanting to control everything, and how I was so concerned that I was afraid. That's the word. I was afraid. I was McJudging everybody, including my husband, on he's going to make me choose between my relationship with my sister and my relationship with our family. I was afraid that he was going to judge this addiction thing, because my judgment was he comes from a perfect family. I do not. One of these things is not like that.
There are no perfect families.
But that was my vision, and so he's going to want to get as far away from this, and he's going to make me choose. So I just won't tell him what's going on with me, so he doesn't have to judge me, type thing. So what I would do different, thank you. This is what I do different, is I would share more. I would share more. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I felt the stigma. I would step into that truth more. That's what I would do different. And I'm able to do that now with my sister, which is awesome. And I have, all the support of my family, and feeling that I didn't have that, because it was too much, or everybody was, whatever, afraid, embarrassed. Yeah, because it's seeing how each person can shine in those moments is so beautiful to be in the audience of. It brings me to tears thinking about it.
From your sister's perspective, what was her turning point?
You mean to getting clean and stepping into recovery?
Yeah, because reading the book, my gosh, she really went through hell with these drugs. I mean, what she went through physically, mentally, spiritually was really brutal. What clicked one day that made her decide she had to turn things around?
So my sister and I do events together now, which is really cool, because we spread, the hope and healing that's in recovery, and we get to do it together, and we get to share two sides of the same coin when we were stepping into moments together. And what she reports is that it was a constellation of events that happened. First is she always knew a life that was not where she loved being in her body, loved being in community and giving to community, and loved being with her family and loved being with people. So she has being in a career and being of service. So she had a knowledge of that and had a memory of that. And so she reports that, and she says that at events, and she knows that there were people in the trap houses that never had that. So this was all they knew, but she knew another life. And so she held on to that. Additionally, her husband was in jail, and she had gone to see him in jail. And that thought that, oh, this is my life. My husband's in jail. He's never going to get out. This is part of my life now. And then another element or factor that kind of rolled into this, there's two-ish more, that her landlord assaulted her, like just beat the crap out of her. And when this was a period of time where she was relapsing, and she was going to an outpatient facility, checking in with a medical doctor, and he slams his hands on the desk and says, "Kaylen, do you know how much fentanyl you have in your system? You should totally be dead right now." And she had a thought. She had some relapses where she had to be Narcan, like she had some doses. I didn't know about that. Like, she's telling this at our speaking events now, where she overdosed and she had to be Narcan, and she had a feeling and a thought within her that she wants to live. And so that kind of constellation of factors, energies, stuff, was water falling on her.
You know, when I look back on that diagnosis of ADHD at a young age, as a teenager or a young teenager, you have to wonder if these drugs aren't a gateway for other drugs, but also, is there another way to handle this? I mean, is ADHD somewhere in a spectrum of okay, normal? I mean, kids have a lot of energy, you know? Everybody's not always focused at 13 years old or whatever the age is. And I have to wonder if that doesn't introduce kind of a lack of spiritual component into your life.
I am so with you. I mean, and isn't that really everybody else's problem? You can't handle that someone taps their foot and is like, "Oh, squirrel." That's on you. Figure it out. I mean, that's how I feel, I mean, why drug people out for your peace? That has never made sense to me. Why can't we step into other people's pain or suffering? I mean, it's in our sphere, in our lap, for a reason. So don't get me wrong. I'm a personal injury lawyer, and pain and suffering, physical pain and suffering is a real thing. I get that. And it pains me when people are in pain. But drugging people out, especially young people, because the behavior doesn't make sense in the brain of the people with initials after their name, has never made sense to me. Kind of angers me, actually.
Is it? No, when I think about it, I think that drugs kind of block you off from any sort of spiritual development. And is addiction at its heart partly spiritual?
I feel that 100%. And I feel that there were times to cope with what was happening. And I consider myself a spiritual person. I consider myself empathic. I felt my sister. I felt my sister. And there were times I look back on this now, and she talks about the first time that she did a needle to the neck. And I think about that time frame, and I remember this crazy neck pain that I got when I was at a yoga retreat for no reason. I mean, like, just came on me like a devil, you know? Anywho, spiritual component, yes, I feel that, because like I developed this practice. I called it morning well-being time. And I would get real with my, what I call red flag feelings, RFFs, whether it was grief or sadness or fear or resentment. And I would noodle down to its nubbins. And sometimes I would just get up extra early, like 4 a.m, to have this moment with myself, because I also felt I was having it with her. And whenever I would be in her presence, whether it was at a trap house, when it was at a trap house, I always saw her light. I always saw her, and we were always connected there. We didn't lose that. And I feel that spirit was always there.
Well, explain what a trap house is.
Good question. It just comes out of me like, whatever. But it's I have a glossary in my book. I defined it in the book. Maybe I should just go ahead and do that. I defined it in the book rather than off the top of my head. They're also known as crack houses, or crack den, a place where cocaine in the form of crack is bought, sold, or smoked, usually blacked out in windows and unclean and overflowing with toilets, spoiled food, stained walls, peeling wallpaper, dirty and damaged floors, scattered with trash, glass, pipes, and tin foil. And trap house, originally used to describe a crack house, a drug house, shelter for drug users. And so it's basically the house where all the junkies are, and the drug sellers are running the perimeter. And any place can be a trap house. I mean, even a basement of a parent's house, and they might not know it. So they'll just it's a place where drugs happen and junkies go, and it can happen in hotel rooms, it can happen in RVs, it can happen everywhere, and they move. So that's a trap house.
No, it's so interesting. I tend to be kind of naive on the drug front because it's just never been part of my life, and yet it is always there. I mean, everybody knows who to go to, even if you don't do any drugs. You know who to go to, who will know where to go or have access. And yet it's this piece of life that, unless you go through something like you did, it just is not part of your worldview.
And it was not when this happened. So I feel you are the was me, okay, back in the day, like in 2016. You and I were one. I had no clue. And that part of that naivety, and then my connection with my sister, like, allowed, like, I didn't need courage. I had the naivety, you know. I would just walk right in. I would just step right in, and I'd be like, okay, what's, you know, I'm here to take you to the doctor. You know,
it's just such a stunning transformation of your reality, you know?
Totally. And I mean, there's so much that you overlook because you love this person. I mean, I'm walking in the snow with propane tanks, and there's needles lining it. And I'm like, okay, you start to rationalize things in your brain as to why this would work. But then it was just like, okay, I cannot deny this anymore. This is freaking real. You know, this is a trap house. This is it. My sister's on a cot in a trap house, bleeding and oozing. I got to take her to the hospital.
God, in your book you wrote, I simply was not strong or smart enough to overcome what possessed her. But it's not about being smart, and it's not even about being strong. I mean, it's about, I don't know, it's a combination of letting go and yet staying connected and concerned. How do you balance that?
Yeah, it's showing up with love. And the times where it's too much, it's they call it detach with love. I reframe that as loving from afar. Because detach was just felt like a chop off for me, like a chop off my arm. Couldn't do it. I couldn't stop loving her. So then it was like, I can't love her this way. It hurts me too much. It's not healthy for me. I can't show up as a wife, as a mother, as a daughter, I can't show up as me. How can I love her? And so I had to find other ways to love her while she was there.
What did you learn about yourself going through this?
I learned, oh man, I learned about myself. My love is big and it never stops. My love is big and it never stops. And there's always ways, I'm getting all emotional about it. There's always ways to put it out there. And it's really, there's so many ways that love can be. I mean, people just throw that word out like, oh, I love you. Or, especially on Valentine's Day, well, I love you too. I love you more. But how people show up in love, how they show their love can be, that's what I learned. There's so many ways to show up in love. There's so many ways. And it's just, it's always ever changing and evolving. I just love that. I love that.
What advice do you have for other people facing an addict in the family or in their circle?
Another form of love is loving yourself. And so my feeling is, in order to step in to the chaos of loving someone when they're at their worst in a very difficult situation, whether it's addiction or other kind of brain disease, like for example, my mother has Alzheimer's, my father had a stroke, and has his own brain trauma. In order to step into those very difficult situations with love, you have to love yourself first. And when those RFFs show up, resentment over betrayals or grief because you've lost a part of someone, getting in tune with where those come from and why is a form of loving yourself. So you can step into the truth of your relationship with that person. And I encourage people who love people who are difficult to love for whatever reason to love themselves first. Find all the ways, all the things that you love, whether it's a wonderful Epsom salt bath, a beautiful cup of tea, journaling, walking in nature, whatever it is that feeds your soul, do that. Do that first. So you can step in to loving the people in your life, even when they're difficult to love.
If you could rewrite your story, would you?
No. No, I would not. I would not. I was called. I really feel I was called to this.
Thank you for listening. I hope you'll support this podcast by becoming a Bump 2 subscriber. Buy us a cup of coffee. It's your support that makes this podcast and website possible. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life.